even when the world is falling apart, even when things really aren't good, even when things are bad or they're evil or they're angry, in the grand scheme of things, it's gonna be okay. Well, hello, this is Bobby Fleck. Welcome to Day in a Life of a Chaplain Resident at a Level 1 Regional Trauma Center. It's a beautiful morning here at the hospital. A little bit of rain, a little bit of wind this morning, but it's going to be a great on-call shift. Looking forward to the ways that I get to respond and be with patients and families in the midst of all kinds of circumstances and situations, really as I'm rounding in my own units, but also as I'm responding to the pager. Today, as the on-call chaplain, I get to keep the pager on my hip, which means I get to respond to traumas and codes, pages, requests for chaplains by patients, families, staff, really anybody that needs any spiritual care or emotional support while they're at the hospital today. So I will triage those things as other residents and other chaplains are here at the hospital. And then when they leave for the day, I will take care of those myself and or prioritize those based on things that I can personally take care of or things I need to coordinate care for. Just different ways to respond with spiritual care and emotional support here while people are at the hospital. All right, well, here we are about midday or so on this on-call shift, and just wanted to give you a little bit of perspective about how today's going. So this morning we had our group time. We're actually at the end of the second of 3 units for this year-long clinical pastoral education residency. As a chaplain resident here at this Level 1 Regional Trauma Center, my job as a chaplain is to respond to those pages and consults and rounding in my unit, taking care of the spiritual needs of patients and families here at the hospital, as well as staff and other issues that may come up alongside of or on top of my experience as a chaplain employed in the hospital. I have a primary responsibility of education and learning as a student of clinical pastoral education. That's really what the training is about for me as a CPE student. So what that means, we are at the second of 3 units. We're at the end of the second of 3 units in this year-long residency. So we're about 8 months into this 12-month program. And what we did today was we ended the regular part of our education time as students. This semester we've been focusing on family systems and specifically Bowen family systems theory to talk about our own families and learn about where we've come from, what our systems are, what those patterns and all those kinds of things. So today was the final 2 of our 6 residents' presentations about their family systems. I presented my family story, my geneagram as it's called, last week, and as I was presenting that, I was asked to reflect on my own family identity, my family story, patterns and themes and things like that in my family. And I learned a lot about my family, which really informs who I am as a chaplain. It really informs who I am as a person and my personal theology, the ways that I see God at work in my life and the ways that I see God at work in the lives of others. An important theme arose, which is really the topic of this particular check-in as I'm talking about an on-call shift. The way that we deal with anxiety in our families is often the way we deal with our anxiety when it comes to relationships and functioning with others, especially in peer relationships and in any kind of group relationship. My supervisor asked me, what was the self-talk that I say to myself when things get difficult? When the anxiety rises in group conversations and in interactions with my peers, what is it the thing that I say to myself that helps alleviate and bring down the anxiety? That thing that I say to myself is simply this: it's going to be okay. What I'm saying when I say that is really a theological statement, and that's that God has got this, that God is going to make it okay. Even when things are not okay, it's going to be okay. Really, that's a reflection of what's happening in the moment. It's also a bit of faith coming into play and saying that even right now it might not be okay, but it will be okay. God will work it out and make it good, make it okay. Directly from the scripture, God works all things out for the good for those that love him and are called according to his purpose. Really important scripture that serves as an anchor for my life. But the positive self-talk that I say to myself that helps bring down that anxiety is simply that it's going to be okay. As I was walking out here on this break, on this on-call shift, I saw a sticker on the window of a car, and it simply said, "But did you die?" What's hilarious and really a God moment, a serendipitous moment, right? Too random to be random, is this very video where I'm talking about the positive self-talk that I say to myself, which is, for me, it's going to be okay. I saw someone else's positive self-talk, "But did you die?" That's a way, again, of saying to yourself, let's gain some perspective. Let's really put this in relationship of, is this really that big of a deal? That's another way of saying that. Or some people might say, calm down, right? It's gonna be all right. And that really is the way I begin my shift and as an on-call chaplain, and really as I go about my work, as I walk into rooms with patients and families, and often in very difficult situations. I might not say it out loud always because it might not be the most appropriate thing to say to someone in the midst of a crisis. But really, that's part of what you realize, even when the world is falling apart, even when things really aren't good, even when things are bad or they're evil or they're angry or they're whatever that it is that's going on in our life, to really reevaluate and assess and prioritize and go, in the grand scheme of things, it's going to be okay. That's not me saying that it's not difficult. That's not me saying that it isn't bad or that it isn't hard. Really, the more that we can acknowledge that it is bad or that it is difficult, or even if there is evil things that happen, right? I responded to a trauma earlier today where a person was shot. That's not a good thing. In fact, that's probably an evil thing, right? I can say that there's evil in that, and it's not okay. But I can say in the midst of situations that it's gonna be okay. That's where my faith comes in, and I'm really sort of praying out loud to God, God, make it okay. Make it where it's good. Help me to see you and trust in you and know that you got it. And that's my hope for myself and my patients and my families, and in the midst of tragedy and difficult situations and even hopeless moments, that it's gonna be okay. It can be okay. In fact, I believe it can be good. It might be hard to see that in the moment, especially in those really hard moments, and it's not really my job as a chaplain to say that out loud to people. Our group of 6 resident chaplains share an office together. This is actually my cubicle that I normally speak from towards the end of my on-call shift as I kind of check in and reflect together. But we share this office together, the 6 of us, and in the office, there's a bank of 3 computers where generally we chart if we don't have a computer at our desk. A lot of us do have these computers here, as you see right beside me in our cubicles, but like I said, there's a bank of computers. One of the chaplains right at the end of the day came in, sat down, and just let out a huge sigh, a deep breath, as he sat down to finish his charting at the end of the day. One of the other chaplains walked up to him and goes, "Hey man, you all right?" The chaplain that was sitting down said, "Yeah, I'm all right." There was a hesitation in what he said, of course. The chaplain that checked in on him said, "Hey man, who are you trying to convince? Me or yourself?"
Sometimes we do that. Actually, a lot of times, probably, if we're being honest, we say things out loud to others when they ask us how we're doing or what's going on in our lives. And we're, in a lot of ways, trying to convince ourselves that it's going to be okay and that things really are all right. And maybe there are those times, too, where somebody asks us how we're doing and, we really don't want to share what's going on. It happens to me all the time as a chaplain when I walk into someone's room and ask either the patient or the family, hey, how's it going? I've kind of stopped asking that question because, the obvious fact is you're at a hospital and things really aren't okay right now. So can we talk just a little bit? If you would invite me in and allow me to just spend some time with you in conversation, I'd like to ask you a couple of questions and just check in, see how things are going. That's kind of normally my introduction. I'll knock, enter the door and go, hey, my name's Bobby. I'm a chaplain here at the hospital. And if you got a couple minutes, I just want to check in with you and kind of see how things are going. I don't really ask that question, how are you doing? Or how's it going? I just say, I want to check in and see how is it going. My next question, a lot of times, is, as I've learned, what brings you to the hospital? It's kind of a neutral question and hopefully opens up the door for a conversation, a little bit of a review about, what are the circumstances that brought you to the hospital this time? I can kind of gauge, usually immediately what's really going on in someone's life. And my job as a chaplain, as I conduct those assessments and screenings, really is to determine what the need really is, what's really going on in their life, and how I can respond in either support or clarification, maybe even a confrontation about what's going on, advocacy, religious ritual, prayer support, bringing people from outside organizations, a priest, sacraments. There's all kinds of ways that we respond, but it really starts with that spiritual assessment, that spiritual screening, and asking, can you tell me a little bit about your faith? Can you tell me what's important to you in your faith? Can you talk to me a little bit about community? And what would you like for us as a healthcare team to address from a spiritual and emotional perspective in order to provide the best healthcare possible for you? That screening tool that I just described right there is actually called FICA. F-I-C-A. And each of those letters describe a particular screening part. The F stands for faith. The I stands for important, the C stands for community, and the A stands for address. As a chaplain, we do that primarily from a spiritual perspective and also an emotional perspective. We look at the bigger picture of what's going on, the meaning side of things. And for a lot of people, the spiritual side is the meaning-making side of things. We also get into family dynamics, and we get into cultural identity, and we get into values and sort of these bigger, ethereal kind of things that really aren't bigger in some sense. They're actually foundational. I was recently talking to a parent of a child, and I'm going to use neutral gender language as I talk about this in order to protect this medical information, but share it to you as an example as well. I was recently talking to a parent of a child at the hospital, and this particular child had recently been moved to a treatment called ECMO. ECMO. That's a medical treatment that stands for extracorporeal membrane oxygenation. ECMO. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a medical professional when it comes to that. So just remember, as I say what ECMO is and what that means to me, that's my interpretation, and don't take this as medical advice. It's a way for us to provide oxygenation to a patient patient whose body is having a very difficult time oxygenating the blood in their body. The blood is taken out of a patient through a tube into a machine that oxygenates the blood and then returns that blood back to the person. This parent in front of me shared some of the difficulty of what was going on. Not only was the child undergoing ECMO treatment, there were also some very difficult relationship issues that the parent was dealing with, and the parent shared some of the facts of that with me. As I said out loud and reflected out loud, I said, I'm sad that this is going on. It's not fair that your child is undergoing this treatment, and it really makes me sad. So I'm wondering if you would trust me with that and share a little bit of that with me as well. I took a little bit of risk sharing this emotion and hopeful that this parent would trust me and open up, and this parent did. This parent began to share some of their own emotional concerns about what was going on, and we were able to connect. The intervention that I offered, if we want to think about that in terms of spiritual assessments and spiritual interventions, was companioning, was listening, was empowering and validating the emotional response and helping this parent find connection, to realize that this parent's not alone, that there really is something going on in this moment. This particular parent was Christian, and so we were able to reflect on some of that theologically and release some of that concern, some of that anxiety to God, and ask God to be present in the midst of these complicated and difficult emotions. I'm happy to say that this conversation began to blossom, began to go well. Not all of those interactions do go well. I do want to be clear. I walk a very thin line when it comes to offering advice, when it comes to declaring a situation a particular way. And you may be wondering why I would say something like that. I want to be clear when I talk to a patient or family, nurse, doctor, community member. I want to be very clear that I really don't know what's going to happen, that I really don't know if things are going to get better physically for that person. And so the very thin line that I walk very, very often is to not produce or provide false hope. What I mean by that is I need to make sure that my words don't get misunderstood as a proclamation that things are going to get better physically, or that things are going to get better socially or emotionally or spiritually, whatever realm. But most often it would be very easy for me to mislead, to misguide a patient or family into thinking that they would get better physically. So when I meet someone, even in a very difficult, tragic situation, even in a normal situation, even when they're going to get discharged, I can't make promises like that. I can't say, well, you're going to get better. I can't say, well, it really is going to be all right. This isn't that big of a deal. When I think to myself, it's going to be okay. What I mean by that in my self-talk is to reassess, to reevaluate, and to see something from a different perspective, from an eternal, a God-sized perspective, from a life perspective, and realize that what I'm going through, what I'm experiencing, isn't as big as I'm feeling it right now. That's me and my self-talk to lower my anxiety. I don't say that out loud to a patient or a family. Almost never say that out loud to them, because it really might not be okay for them physically. It really might not get better for them. I can't proclaim that or promise that, because that would provide false hope. I didn't say that to the parent of a child in the ICU. I don't say that out loud to that patient that I mentioned that I saw earlier who was a victim of a gunshot wound. I don't know if any of them are going to get better physically. I don't know if any of them or any of my patients are going to get better in any kind of way. Ultimately, I'm supporting them in their agenda and their goals if they invite me in and allow me to do that with them. But it's always with permission. It's never in a perspective of counseling in the sense that I have the answers and I'm going to tell you what the answers are and here's what you need to do, X, Y, Z, A, B, C, 1, 2, 3. It just doesn't work that way as a chaplain. It really doesn't just work that way in any kind of relationship or really life in general. It's never really that simple or that prescriptive. We might want it to be, but it's not. So when I say it's going to be okay, remember, that's a self-talk for me, for myself.
It's about 4:30 in the morning right now. I received a call a little after 4 o'clock in the morning from the house supervisor requesting me to return to the hospital to pray with a family. Their loved one is in the operating room and is receiving emergency surgery for repair after a gunshot wound. So I'm going to walk in and talk with the family, be with them and pray with them as they requested, and spend some time to see how I can support them.
Well, just an update as I went into the emergency room, as I said just a second ago, I was assuming that this was the same patient that had a gunshot wound that I talked about earlier, but this was actually a different patient. Can't give any details on the situation, obviously. At the time of the conversation and visit with them, their family member was currently in the operating room, so they were asking questions about what was going on, or if they could get an update, or really just that kind of crisis mode and shock and trying to figure out really how to feel about what was going on. So my job in that is to respond and help to find some calm in the midst of a very not calm situation. So we talked through some crisis counseling as well as prayer per their request. And the family was Christian, and so we talked about different things that had happened in their life and what was giving them strength and hope in the midst of it all. And my intervention to them was to bolster that sense of connectedness to their faith and to their coping mechanisms, and to rely on that strength in the midst of a time where they really don't know the details about the circumstances about what happened and or what is happening in surgery. So that is kind of my job, is to bolster that, alleviate some of that, or really help them to find hope and encouragement in the midst of a difficult situation as well. As we would end our time together today, what is it? What is it that you're telling yourself? What's your self-talk? How do you help to lower the anxiety in your life? Maybe like my supervisor, it's a way for you to say to yourself, this isn't the end of the world. Maybe like that sticker that I showed earlier on the car, you're asking yourself, but did I die? Or maybe like me, you're saying to yourself, it's gonna be okay. Whatever that self-talk is for yourself, I encourage you to speak to yourself. Speak to your emotions and to whatever it is that you're going through right now, or wherever you find yourself, and help yourself realize that things are gonna work out. It is gonna be okay. That you can activate your trust and your faith and whatever that perspective looks like for you. For me as a Christian, I'm praying. I'm asking Jesus to guide me, to save me, to use me, to speak to me. I'm asking the Spirit to move in me and empower me and help me, encourage me to trust God each and every day. My blessing for you is that you would find that self-talk for yourself, that you would rely on that and reestablish, strengthen that relationship between you and God, that you would be able to face the challenges that come before you today and in the days to come. May God bless you. Until we meet again, remember, it's gonna be okay.